That night, the fire engine sirens tore through the neighborhood. My front door was smashed open, no flames, only the truth. 11 hours earlier, my husband's phone screen flashed, a short line of text with a red heart. Then came the strange perfume clinging to his collar, a receipt at an upscale restaurant, and a silent tube of gel in the glove compartment. I did not cry. I only changed one very small thing. The rest, let justice speak. The entire 911 team froze. On that bed, the two people I once believed were a safe harbor were locked together, refusing to let go. Do not rush. The knockout is still waiting in the later act. Before we go on, make sure to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments, because what comes next will surely send shivers down your spine. The pendulum clock, my father's wedding gift before he passed away, no longer ticked with its gentle rhythm. Now, each tick sounded heavier, like a warning that something was about to happen inside this house. The door swung open. Richard staggered in like a man fleeing from himself. His eyes revealed exhaustion, though he tried to wear a mask of calm. He yanked at his tie, as if it were strangling him, then threw his briefcase onto the floor. The crash echoed through the room. He flung his coat over the chair, and I saw a smudged streak of red lipstick on his shirt collar, too obvious to ignore. His body reeked of alcohol, mixed with that cheap, sharp sweetness of perfume. That smell did not belong in this house. It swept away the last trace of tenderness I had left, planting in me the seed of suspicion. Richard did not look at me. He mumbled a few words, then collapsed onto the bed. The springs groaned under his weight. For 36 years, my hand had always reached for his shoulder in moments like this, but this time, I froze. The perfume still lingered in the air. Under the dim light of the bedside lamp, his face bore deeper lines of age. Within seconds, his snoring began loud, careless. I stood still. My throat tightened as I whispered, "Sleep, Richard, but I will stay awake. I will see the truth." The room was filled only with the ticking clock, the creak of the bed springs, and the scent of betrayal clinging to his breath. I quietly closed the door. My footsteps carried the same routine they had for years, quietly tidying up after his late nights. But tonight was different. Something pulled me toward the table. His coat was slung across the chair, his wallet half open, his old laptop still warm, and there it was, his phone, its screen glowing faintly toward the ceiling. My hand trembled as I picked it up. At that very moment, the phone vibrated. My heart jolted. In the bedroom, Richard shifted, his snores heavy and uneven. I held my breath, praying he would not wake. A new message appeared. The subject line was nothing but a red heart and a flame. I hesitated, then opened it. "I can't stop thinking about tonight, Dad. You were amazing." I froze. My mind went blank. Amazing? With who? And why call him Dad? I whispered to myself, each word spinning endlessly in my head. I scrolled down, searching for more clues. Nothing. Just a strange address, a string of meaningless characters, and an anonymous tulip avatar. No history, no attachments, just one sentence enough to shred my soul. I took a screenshot, saved it in a hidden folder. Evidence. Truth. My hand trembled again as I carefully placed the phone back exactly where it had been. I glanced toward the bedroom. Richard was still fast asleep, as though nothing had happened, but the words echoed in my skull. "I can't stop thinking about tonight, Dad. You were amazing." And in that instant, I understood. I was no longer his wife. I was only a bystander, about to witness the unveiling of a filthy play. I steadied myself and kept cleaning, forcing my hands to move as if everything were normal. Picking up his coat, straightening his wallet, folding the old laptop shut. But when I slid my hand into Richard's trouser pocket, my fingers brushed against a folded slip of paper. A receipt. From an upscale restaurant in Dallas. The date tonight. At the very top, written in red ink, was a small note. Table 13 R&R. My chest tightened. R&R? Who was the other R? I scanned the order list. A table for two. A bottle of white wine, the very same he once gave me on our 20th anniversary. The mains. Lobster tail with truffle butter and prime ribeye steak. And in the waiter's notes, One chilling line. 2 glasses of wine, one with lipstick mark, glass replaced. I clenched the receipt in my hand. The strange perfume still lingered on the paper's edge, the same perfume that clung to his shirt tonight. I stood frozen. Then from the bedroom came a murmur in his sleep. "Rebecca?" The blood in my veins boiled. The house fell into suffocating silence. Only the clock ticked on, each beat cutting sharper than the last. I opened the camera app, taking photos of the receipt from every angle, with the exact time recorded. Then I pulled open the drawer, sliding out a wooden box where I had once kept our most cherished tokens, our first Valentine's card, a few faded love letters. I slipped the receipt beneath those promises of forever he had written long ago. Closing the lid slowly, the heavy sound was no different from a door slamming shut, burying my trust forever. My instincts told me it would not end here. I had to search further. I slipped on a pair of dishwashing gloves, pulling them tight. I would not allow that filth to touch my skin. Standing at the garage door, I drew a deep breath, counted. 1, 2, 3, then stepped inside. Richard's SUV was still warm, the sharp blend of gasoline and that cloying perfume seeping from the seats. I switched on the flashlight of my phone, combing through every compartment and pocket. Only a few coins, an empty water bottle. I leaned closer, determined. When I opened the glove compartment, my hand touched a slick plastic tube. I pulled it out. A tube of personal lubricant. The cap was crusted, the body squeezed thin. The label read clearly, Durex. I froze. Richard and I had not been intimate for years. He always said he was tired, that age had caught up with him. So who was this for? I photographed it from several angles, then placed it back exactly as I had found it. In the side pocket, I discovered a cigarette pack. He had never smoked this brand. 2 sticks remained inside, their acrid smell scratching my throat. Clearly, someone else had been here. I bent down toward the gear shift. A long strand of brown hair was caught in the plastic seam. The color chilled me to the core. A name flared in my mind at once. Rebecca. I used tweezers to pluck it out, sealed it in a small zip bag, and took photos of its position before and after. On the floor, a hotel parking stub surfaced, the timestamp perfectly aligned with the restaurant receipt. My thoughts connected the chain. Restaurant, hotel. On the back seat, crumpled tissues reeked of that perfume. In the seat pocket, I pulled out 2 late-night movie tickets, romantic drama. The pattern was flawless. I returned everything to its place. The tube of Durex, back in the glove compartment, the cigarettes in the door pocket, the tickets and receipt neatly folded. I even made a tiny mark, my secret signal to detect any tampering later. After locking the car, I ripped off the gloves and tossed them into the trash, then scrubbed my hands under the faucet until the skin burned raw. Still, the stench of betrayal seemed etched into me. In my head, I could almost hear Rebecca's mocking laugh. "Thank you for lending me your husband." I bit down hard on my lip, opened the notes app on my phone, and typed the final line. The chain of evidence is now complete. I turned off the screen, inhaled deeply. Everything was ready. Now, I would let it sit quietly until the day the truth would expose itself. Back inside the house, I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands still trembling as I held Richard's phone. By now, I was almost certain he had betrayed me. But almost was not enough. I needed truth that was systematic evidence, so undeniable it could never be denied. I checked his computer for more messages. Only a few curt, lifeless work exchanges. The inbox was empty. I whispered to myself, so clean, sterile. Someone wiped it all. I clicked through sent. Drafts also empty. Too clean, too perfect. As if an invisible hand had scrubbed the soul of the machine. Lifting my eyes, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass cabinet. Instinct stirred. I adjusted the hallway camera so it wouldn't catch my face directly. Then I went back to work. The family photo was gone from his desktop background. Instead, a bleak landscape, gray sky, empty horizon. In his gallery, a similar image appeared, but stripped of metadata, all traces erased. In the apps list, an unfamiliar icon glowed. Vaultmail, or temp box, the kind of anonymous mailbox built for secrets. I tried to open it, but it demanded a private PIN. I backed out, wrote it down in my notebook. In the settings, I noted repeated midnight logins. I recorded every timestamp. The dishwasher hummed into its drying cycle, its droning like a muffled sob filling the kitchen. I opened a small drawer, pulled out my wedding ring. Now it was icy. I set it beside an empty USB drive, the future vault for my evidence. In front of me sat a half-eaten slice of cake, once my favorite dessert. I raised the fork but lowered it again. The sweetness had curdled into bitterness. From outside, the neighbor's TV carried news of a scam involving forged data. I bit my lip. Forged data. A forged marriage. The parallels struck me like lightning. I reviewed once more. No emails, no photos, no history. Just an emptiness, too deliberate. I opened my notes and began building a timeline. 6:40 p.m., restaurant. 8:15 de la tarde, hotel parking stub. 10:05 nachmittags, late-night movie tickets. Vault mail logins at 12:05 a.m., 2:15 a.m., 3:22 a.m. Photo of the sky, metadata erased. Text. I can't stop thinking about tonight, Dad. You were amazing. I archived everything, detail by detail. The fridge light flicked on and off, illuminating the growing stack of paper, a marriage rotting before my eyes. I looked at the knife on the cutting board. A dark thought flickered, but I pushed it down. Justice must be cold and precise, not driven by violence. I slapped my cheeks lightly, whispering to myself, no tears, only action. I gathered the evidence onto the USB. For the first time, my hand stopped shaking. Near midnight, the wind outside rattled the chimes on the porch, while his snores droned on from the bedroom. I closed the notebook, slipped the ring back where it belonged. But inside me, the anger no longer burned. It had frozen into stone cold, unbreakable. I knew I could not carry this burden alone. I needed another pair of eyes, cold, professional, and there was only one person I could turn to. At dawn, as the first light slipped through the curtains, I was already seated in the kitchen, waiting. The evidence replayed in my mind on an endless loop: the gel tube, the strand of brown hair, the parking stub, the movie tickets, the tissues soaked with cheap perfume, the restaurant receipt, every link connected into a chain. I knew I had to take the next step. Richard shuffled into the kitchen, poured himself coffee, his voice hoarse. Big meeting today, I'll be home late. The words fell like an old tape on repeat. I nodded, smiled the smile of a dutiful wife. But inside, my decision was made. The moment he left, I picked up my phone. A name appeared. Linda. I pressed call. Linda, can you help me reach Jack? I need his help. There was a pause. Then her firm reply, Margaret, don't let anyone know you came to me. I'll call Jack. This has to stay quiet. I only want the truth, I said. Not 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text. This is Jack. Meet me at Ascension Coffee at noon. Back table. Don't worry. Ascension Coffee sat tucked on a quiet corner. I chose the innermost table, back to the wall, an espresso in front of me. The rich aroma of roasted beans tightened my chest. My hands shook so badly that the server quietly left an extra napkin beside me. Jack arrived on time, a solidly built man in a pale blue shirt, middle-aged, with eyes that had seen too much truth to waste time on show. He placed a slim file folder on the table. Mrs. Roberts, first, confidentiality agreement. 1 copy for you, 1 for me. No one else touches it. I signed. The pen cut into the paper as if slicing away the last of my innocence. Betrayers always leave traces, Jack said quietly. My job is to find them. I slid my evidence across the table. I never put all my eggs in one basket. These are copies. He nodded, handed me a cheap disposable phone. This is our private line. I'll send images, videos, coordinates, timestamps. The first 48 hours are crucial. If they follow a pattern, we'll catch it. He opened a map on his tablet, pointing to routes, blind spots near Richard's office, peak hours at the hotel parking lot. He explained safe tailing techniques. I sat motionless, recording every word. I need your consent to record audio, take photos, video. Evidence must hold up in court if needed. I met his gaze. No violence. I only want the truth. He paused, then nodded, handed me a black card. One side, a phone number. The other, a single line of text. Light and truth. I folded the file, gripped my bag tightly. Stepping out of the cafe, the wind whipped across my face. I pulled my scarf close, straightened my back. Whatever awaited me, I now had an ally, and I was ready for the truth to be exposed. I did not have to wait long. That very afternoon, the first message from Jack arrived. The photo on my screen made my chest tighten with pain. Richard, in his familiar pale blue shirt, his hand locked tightly around a woman's as they stepped into an upscale restaurant. I zoomed in. The woman looked exactly like Rebecca. A fitted black dress hugging her figure, lips painted red, nails lacquered crimson, scratching lightly across the back of his hand as if marking her territory. Around her neck shimmered a necklace, the very one I had gifted David on his wedding day. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the kitchen table. My palm pressed against my chest, forcing my heartbeat steady. A single thought stabbed through me, both bitter and cruel. I once taught her how to work. Today, she teaches me the stench of betrayal. I picked the phone up again. Another text from Jack. Check bill. A photo of the receipt appeared. Once more, white wine, the bottle once reserved for my own anniversaries. The tip unusually high. Richard was generous, but only with his guilt. I sank into the chair, back pressed against the cold wall. This marriage was already a corpse, waiting only for its death certificate. Then came another file. A shaky, distant video, but clear enough. The third-floor balcony of a hotel. Richard's arm draped around Rebecca's waist, her head resting on his shoulder, their foreheads pressed together, followed by a kiss like a hammer blow to my skull. I zoomed closer. It was her. It could be no one else. I set the phone down, shut my eyes, and counted aloud. 1, 2, 3. Then, in a slow, deliberate tone, like reciting a verdict, I spoke, "This is not an affair. This is a sentence." Opening my laptop, I created a new folder. I named it Truth. I inserted every photo, every video inside. My fingers no longer trembled. At that moment, I knew I was no longer his wife. I was the witness. I was the plaintiff. Barely 30 minutes later, Jack sent a stream of new photos, each more damning than the last. The first set showed Richard and Rebecca leaving the restaurant hand in hand, heading straight toward a 4-star hotel in the city center. The gleaming glass doors reflected them like an official couple, careless, shameless, as if the rest of the world did not exist. The next clip captured them waiting for the elevator. The metallic ding rang cold in the background. As the doors slid shut, one image lingered shoulder to shoulder, eyes locked. A message from Jack followed. Hourly room rental, then extended overnight. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, but my hand kept moving, recording every detail, every timestamp. Restaurant, hotel, elevator. A flawless chain of events. Then came a photo of the minibar receipt. Liquor, chocolate, condoms. The timestamp aligned perfectly with their check-in. I saved it into my growing file, numbering each piece of evidence. 01, hotel nameplate. 02, balcony video. 03, car license plate photo. 04, minibar receipt. 05, elevator clip. 06, check-in and extension log. I organized them neatly into a folder labeled Justice, backed up in 3 places: USB, external hard drive, encrypted cloud. This time, I did not tremble. I knew I was building an unshakable case, a record no one could dispute. Through the restaurant window, I glanced up at the night sky. Once, under that same sky, Richard and I had whispered promises of forever. Tonight, under the same stars, I faced the brutal reality of betrayal. Setting my phone down, I let out a long breath. Thank you, Jack. This truth costs more than any bottle of wine. They had deceived me, deceived David, deceived the entire neighborhood for so long. Family dinners, holiday parties, cheerful chatter at gatherings, All of it had been nothing more than a carefully staged play. I had been sitting there, believing I was living in happiness, when in truth, I was only an audience member fooled by their performance. I remembered David's wedding day. Rebecca had wept when I placed a necklace around her neck as a gift. At the time, I thought her tears were genuine. But now, seeing these pieces of evidence, I knew it had all been rehearsal. She had been practicing this role for years, and I had believed every line. Outside, the world carried on as if nothing had changed. Children pedaled their bikes, cars hummed down the street, but inside me, the truth lay bare. Jack understood, and soon another message from him arrived. Want me to capture their voices? I stared at the screen. The answer in my head was sharp and immediate. Yes. Pictures were enough, but I needed to hear them condemn themselves with their own mouths. I wanted Richard not as my husband in my ears, but as the traitor he truly was. I wanted Rebecca not as my daughter-in-law, but as the accused in this filthy trial. The phone buzzed again. Another photo appeared. Richard pulling out a chair for Rebecca with the very hand still wearing his wedding ring. The ring that once symbolized vows, now transformed into proof of disgrace. I pressed my forehead against the oven glass, whispering to myself, "Enough. This play ends here. From now on, I write the script." I opened my notebook, adding to the timeline. 7:18 p.m., hand in hand at the restaurant. 7:45 p.m., Rebecca tugging his sleeve, gestures too intimate. 8:07 nachmittags, wine glass, tender glances. 9:43 p.m., hotel check-in, extended overnight. 4 a.m., balcony kiss. At the bottom, I wrote 2 private lines for myself. They performed so well I almost applauded. My turn to choose the stage, switch on the lights, and call action. I closed the notebook, drew the curtains. The room sank into a cold twilight. Outside, the voices of young men drifted up the street, but inside me, all warmth had been extinguished. I texted Jack a single decisive message. "I've changed my mind. I want their voices. Send them directly to me." His reply came fast. "Consider it done." I drew in a long breath. I knew watching silently would never be enough. The time had come to act. I switched on the kitchen light, dragged a chair to the center of the room, and laid out the file I had built. Receipts, hotel stubs, movie tickets, photos from Jack. I printed everything, numbered each piece of evidence. 01, 02, 03. Every detail aligned into a precise timeline, as if I were reconstructing a crime scene. With each page I clipped, my heart beat faster, but my hands grew steadier. I understood now the game had changed sides. I was no longer the deceived wife. I was the witness, the plaintiff, preparing to bring the betrayers into the light. When I sealed the file with red wax, it felt like closing a door. Behind it, 36 years of marriage shut forever. Ahead of me, a new path, the road of justice. The house was silent, save for the steady ticking of the wall clock. I opened a cabinet and turned the family portrait face down. For the first time in decades, I no longer wanted to see the face I once trusted. At that very moment, the front door creaked open. Richard stumbled inside, just as always reek of alcohol, drenched in cheap perfume. He muttered excuses, blaming difficult clients, claiming he had to drink more than usual. I handed him a glass of water, my voice flat. "Drink. Wash it down with your lies." He noticed nothing, only patted my shoulder in his hollow routine and staggered to the bedroom. Soon, his snoring rattled through the walls again, but nothing was ordinary anymore. My phone buzzed, a call from Jack. His words were sharp, decisive. "I've got the recording. They don't know. I'll send it now." Seconds later, an audio file appeared. I plugged in my earphones, sat at the table, and pressed play. Rebecca's voice came first, sly, manipulative. "Dad, hurry and sign all those fake papers. I want the whole restaurant chain. Then kick her out of the house." My hand clenched the pen so tightly it snapped in two. Then came Richard's voice, deep, familiar, once a comfort, now a knife twisting in my back. "Don't worry. Margaret doesn't suspect a thing. She trusts me blindly." I closed my eyes, letting each word carve itself into memory. This was not just adultery, this was conspiracy. They wanted it all. The restaurants I had built with sweat, the home I had protected for 36 years, my very dignity. I opened my laptop, saved the audio to the USB, and labeled it A1. Under notes, I typed one simple line: asset theft, organized. They had crafted a plan to erase me from the life I had built, but I had a plan of my own, and that night, I chose to strike first. While Richard snored in drunken oblivion, I quietly lifted his car keys from the nightstand. The SUV waited in the garage like a silent accomplice. I opened the door, turned on my phone's flashlight. Everything was still where I had left it. Then my eyes fell on it again, the filthy tube of lubricant. A living artifact of his betrayal. I picked it up, disgust curling inside me. But instead of discarding it, an idea formed. Carrying it into the kitchen, I placed it on the stone counter. From the drawer, I pulled out a clear industrial adhesive, the same glue I often used to repair furniture at the restaurant. Sometimes, the simplest tools become the sharpest weapons. I slipped on gloves, slowly filled the tube with glue. Every drop that oozed inside, I imagined as another charge laid against them. When the tube was full, I wiped the cap clean, dried it thoroughly until it looked untouched. No trace, no suspicion, only a trap, waiting to spring. Back in the garage, I returned it to its original spot in the glove compartment. The seat was adjusted back, the floor mat smoothed flat, everything pristine, as if no hand had disturbed it. I even marked a discreet pen line inside a hidden sign for me to know if anyone moved it. Finished, I slipped back into the house, set the keys neatly on the nightstand beside Richard's sleeping form. He never stirred. I sat at the kitchen table, opened a notebook, and scrawled one sentence. This is the first strike. I knew then, I would not need knives, I would not need screams. I would let them trap themselves in the very filth they had chosen. And when the truth came to light, the entire world would see. After setting the first snare, I knew it wasn't enough. I wanted the whole neighborhood to see the truth with their own eyes. If they witnessed it themselves, there would be no denials left. To do that, I needed a smoke trap. At dawn, while the house lay silent, I moved through the kitchen like a surgeon preparing for an operation. I set a pan of oil on the gas stove, testing the flame, timing how long it would take for thick black smoke to rise, how quickly it would spill out the window. Not fire, never fire. Just smoke, dense enough to draw a crowd. I noted everything. Seconds to ignition, seconds to spread. Precision was my ally. To keep control, I lined the stove with wet cloths, a large metal lid close at hand. If the smoke grew beyond my plan, I could snuff it instantly. I wasn't burning the house down, I was unmasking a lie. From the kitchen window, I threaded a thin cord tied to the gas knob. At the other end, I attached a soda can as a counterweight. One tug, and the stove would flare to life. The oil would do the rest. Simple, invisible, undeniable. Before leaving, I stepped into the bedroom. Richard lay sprawled, his back turned. I touched his shoulder lightly, my voice calm, detached. I have errands today. Might be late tonight. He only mumbled, face buried in the pillow. I walked away, cold certainty hardening in my chest. Across the street, I entered Martha's house. She offered me a seat by the window without questions, poured tea quietly, as if she knew. From there, I had a perfect view of my home. On her windowsill, I had already placed a small camera the night before, aimed directly at my front door. It would capture everything. In my pocket, earbuds connected me to the recorder I had hidden in the bedroom. Every word, every laugh, every whisper inside would be mine. When Rebecca walked through that door, the entire world would know. I sat still, sipping coffee, eyes fixed on the house across the street. The moment was coming. All I had to do was wait for them to step into the trap. At exactly 9:45 a.m., a taxi screeched to a stop in front of my house. Rebecca stepped out, dressed in a black dress and oversized dark glasses, her head bowed, trying to disguise herself. She paid quickly, tugged her scarf tight, convinced no one was watching. But I saw everything. The front door cracked open. Richard appeared, eyes darting like a thief. He pulled her inside, slamming the door shut. I gripped the teacup in my hand until it rattled. The moment had arrived. Through my earbuds, their laughter spilled from the hidden recorder, followed by the clink of glasses in the bedroom. Richard's voice dropped low, smug, triumphant. "We don't need hotels anymore. This house is ours." Rebecca's mocking laugh followed. "She's gone, right?" I bit my lip until it bled, forcing myself to remain seated. In my ears, the bed creaked, their muffled giggles weaving through the air. Across the table, Martha glanced at me and gave a slight nod. Everything was being captured. I pulled out my phone, sending the signal. A tug on the cord, hidden behind the curtain. In the kitchen of my house, the stove clicked alive, the pan of oil igniting into thick smoke. Within seconds, dark clouds poured from the windows, just as I had calculated. "Margaret, your house is smoking!" Martha shouted first, her voice pitched high for the neighbors to hear. The street erupted. Doors opened, feet pounded pavement. Someone yelled, "Call 911 now." I stood at the window, eyes locked on my house, unblinking. In my ears, chaos spread. Rebecca's shrill cry, "Richard, do something, I can't breathe." His furious growl, "Shut up, stop screaming." But I knew they were helpless. That filthy tube of lubricant in the car, now filled with industrial glue, had sealed their fate. They had trapped themselves in their own disgrace. The smoke rolled out thick, neighbors screaming, sirens already wailing in the distance. And I sat there, calm, steady, watching as the curtain of betrayal began to burn away. Only 8 minutes after the smoke poured out, fire trucks and police cars roared down Highland Park, sirens slicing the air. And from the lead cruiser stepped my son David in full police uniform, face grim, eyes red with dread. "There are people inside. Break the door now!" His command thundered through the chaos. Axes and rams slammed into the wood. The front door burst wide, firefighters flooding in hoses blasting, helmets shining, boots pounding against the floorboards. I stood among the neighbors, dozens of phones raised, every lens hungry for the spectacle no one expected. Then David froze in the bedroom doorway. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. Before his eyes was a sight no son should ever endure. His own father and his own wife, naked, glued together in panic on a crumpled bed. A young firefighter let out a shocked laugh, but David roared, "Silence!" The room chilled instantly. Others rushed to cover the two disgraced figures with a sheet, but it was far too late. The crowd outside was already whispering, "It's Rebecca, David's wife." God, poor David. I turned away, unable to meet my son's eyes. My chest clenched as if bound in iron, but I forced myself to stand still. This was the truth I had chosen for the world to see. Inside, Richard still had enough breath to rasp through clenched teeth. "Get them out! David, shut that door!" But my son straightened, his voice cold as stone. "You have no authority here anymore." Moments later, paramedics wheeled in stretchers. The screech of metal wheels echoed as they hauled the two traitors out. Beneath the white sheet, their ankles were still stuck together, a grotesque chain of shame. Phones flashed, neighbors gasped, some jeered. I did not shed a tear. I simply watched, steady, as betrayal was dragged into the light. On the porch, yellow and black police tape sealed across my doorway. A final line. The marriage was over. Forever. The street still buzzed with whispers, curses, and disgust as the ambulance hauled Richard and Rebecca away. Neighbors shook their heads, some filming, some muttering. A father-in-law and his daughter-in-law, filth like we've never seen. I stood among them, feigning shock, clutching my scarf as though I had just rushed home. But inside, I was steady. The plan was only beginning. At Baylor University Medical Center, the third-floor hallway reeked of antiseptic. I walked calmly, the portrait of a wife in crisis, while in my bag I carried 2 small tubes I had prepared earlier, hot mustard paste disguised in ointment containers. When the doctors and nurses handed me real salves for their skin irritation, I quietly switched them. The genuine medicine slipped into my purse, replaced by my fiery substitutes, lids twisted tight so they looked untouched. In the hospital room, Richard lay pale, Ivy trembling in his arm. Rebecca curled on the bed, hair tangled, eyes averted. They tried to speak, but I gave them nothing. I placed the ointments on the metal tray beside them, my voice flat as glass. Use these. Take care of yourselves. I turned and walked out. Minutes later, their screams tore down the corridor. My skin, it burns! Rebecca's voice cracked with agony. What the hell, my hands, it's fire! Richard bellowed. The ward erupted in chaos. Nurses rushed in, doctors shouting orders, carts screeched against the tiles. Patients peered out of rooms, horrified. I stood at the end of the hall, composed, watching the panic ripple outward. No one suspected, no one could. Among the whispers, voices rose. Those two, it's the scandalous pair from this morning. Serves them right. Shameful. Disgusting. I didn't blink. This was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. This was justice, etched into their skin. I walked away, heels tapping steadily against the floor, leaving behind a trail of screams and humiliation. And in my heart, a single truth crystallized. This was only the second strike. The final reckoning had yet to come. Not long after, I returned to the hospital room with my son at my side. Gone was any trace of tenderness. Only a pale, defeated Richard remained, and Rebecca, broken and avoiding my eyes. Margaret, I can explain, Richard stammered, his voice hollow. I cut him off, my tone sharp as steel. Enough. Explanations are a mercy for the repentant. You are not worthy. I placed a thick folder on the table. Photos, videos, receipts, even the audio recording, all carefully organized. On top lay the divorce papers. I slid the pen toward him, tapped the blank line. Sign, sign, and step out of my life and my son's. Rebecca crumpled to the floor, tears streaking her face. David, please, forgive me. I was wrong. I need you. My son's eyes were bloodshot, but unyielding. He pulled his arm free from her grasp, his voice firm. Don't touch me. He didn't say more, but his silence was his verdict. Richard tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. This is what you wanted all along. Today, I sign for you. In the sterile room, the scratch of his pen across paper sounded like a final bell. 36 years of marriage ended in ink and shame. I gathered the file, locked it with a steel clip, and placed the house keys on the table. My words rang clear. The house is closed to you, forever. I turned and walked out. Behind me came Rebecca's sobs, Richard's hoarse cries, the urgent footsteps of nurses. Their noise swirled together like a funeral dirge without music. In the hallway, David leaned against the wall, clutching his own file of evidence, fists white-knuckled. His voice cracked. Mom, why him? Why her? I had no answer. I only held my son, sharing the weight of the wound. In that moment, we both knew we had lost a family, but at least we still had each other. Weeks later, the restaurant was busier than ever. The bell above the door jingled without pause, customers flowing in and out. I didn't laugh loudly anymore, only smiled softly, the smile of someone who had learned the true cost of the word strength. Martha stopped by the counter for her order, her eyes warm, her words steady. Margaret, the whole neighborhood is proud of you. You protected your family and your work. I nodded, answered simply, thank you. Inside, I thought, strength isn't never falling. It's standing back up and stitching yourself together. David moved in with me. He arrived with a worn black suitcase, his eyes red from sleepless nights. Standing at the kitchen doorway, he said quietly, Mom, I'll stay here for a while. I want to help you. I hugged him, asking no questions. We both needed each other. That evening, we ate dinner face to face. No TV buzzing in the background, no false laughter echoing in the air. Just a simple steak, hot tea, and a silence that felt safe. I slid the restaurant's ledger across the table to him. From today, this is your home. He nodded, pausing for a breath. I saw the wound in his eyes, but also the faint return of light. Day after day, we opened the restaurant together. I worked in the kitchen. David manned the counter, taking orders, greeting guests. Those small, ordinary tasks became our medicine. Within those walls, no one spoke the names Richard or Rebecca. That silence itself was their life sentence. I changed the recipes, added a new seasoning. Sweetness blended with a touch of salt like a reminder. The sweetest thing is always the truth. I wrote it on the chalkboard behind the counter. The sweetest thing is truth. One evening, David leaned in the doorway of the kitchen, a faint smile on his face. "Mom, let's make steak this weekend? I'll stir the caramel." I nodded, feeling my chest lighten for the first time. We were healing slowly, but surely. Late at night, as I locked the restaurant, I looked up at a sky no longer choked with smoke, only velvet black at peace. I whispered to myself, "I'm still here. I am always strong." When I returned home, I opened a glass jar, placed my old wedding ring inside, and pressed a small label to it. Lesson. It wasn't something to forget, but something to remember. I had kept the restaurant. I had kept David. And most importantly, I had kept myself. Richard and Rebecca might have lost everything, but I refused to let them steal my faith in who I am. Forgiveness can feel warm, justice can feel cold, but self-respect must always burn bright. I glanced out the window and smiled as I heard Martha calling. "Margaret, don't let your fire go out." I answered softly. I always add a little more truth into my life. And if someone asked me now, I would tell them this. Not every day draws a clear line between victory and defeat, but today, I have won because I did not lose myself. You've just followed my story, a journey full of pain, but also a journey of finding myself again. The greatest lesson I've learned is this. Once truth is revealed, it will never return to darkness. Now, I want to hear from you. If this story touched you, leave a comment below. Do you believe forgiveness is stronger, or is justice the real answer? If this made you reflect, please like, subscribe, and share so more people can find strength in the truth. And remember, self-respect is the sweetest ingredient in the recipe of life. See you in the next video.